Hello again, everybody. It's the two-man game on Claves Online. I'm Bob Ramsey. That's my partner, Matt Roccio. Glad you're with us, and we've got a lot to talk about. Now, I may holler at my son while we're live and see if I can catch the score of the VCU-Davidson game that is going on as we do this podcast. Matt Roccio and I talked earlier today. Yeah, tonight, let's get her going. I don't know if there's a lot on, and I get home and there's college basketball everywhere. And so if I get distracted, it's because I'm trying to catch a score.
It's 49-49. So, good timing.
Can we get a little third screen and just pop that up here? Would that be all right?
There's probably some rights issues there, but I personally have no issue with it.
All right. What's interesting about that game, Matt, before we get into our real stuff, is you've got probably the best offensive team in the league, Atlantic 10, and that's Davidson, and probably the best defensive team in the league in VCU, and they're battling it out in dead even. It's really a fascinating matchup, and they're playing at VCU, which is, one of the great venues because of the crowd participation in the country. And so I don't know who to root for. You're the analyst here. When it comes to net rankings and it comes to all those things, and think St. Louis U centric, is the league and are the league and the Billikens better off if Davidson wins or VCU wins?
That's a really interesting question, because my initial thought was, again, to think entirely in the scope of what's the best for the A10, because if the A10 looks better, it helps St. Louis look better. And for a second, I was thinking, well, the best thing for the A10 would then be the best team to continue winning. But at the same time, should the hallmark of the A10 not be just one good mid-market team or mid-major team, but 3 or 4 solid mid-major teams? And so VCU beating Davidson kind of brings a little bit, brings number 1 down, but it brings where I think a lot of people have maybe number 4 VCU. It brings them up a little bit more. So is it better for the A10 to have one clear team that's an NCAA team, a top 40 net rating? I think Davidson's borderline like 35 right now. Or is it better for the A10 to maybe have somebody who's like 45, 50, but then have a couple people who are all pushing 70, 65?
So here's the goal. The goal is to get into the NCAA tournament. Nothing else matters at that level. Does it matter if your whole league is pretty good? Is that a good thing? Yes, of course it is. But how many teams can you get into the NCAA tournament, and what's the formula? My fear is that too many so-called good A10 teams didn't get it done in non-conference. And my club, St. Louis U, is the perfect example. Could have beaten Auburn, could have beaten Belmont, could have beaten UAB. You win those 3 games, you're in the NCAA tournament, as long as you do a reasonable job in the Atlantic 10 conference play. And that sort of situation is really, it's kind of what all the teams in the league have done. St. Bonaventure was ranked, then they lost a couple of non-conference games. I mean, this is so and people may not agree with that analysis, but if you agree, then is it best to have one team roll through and be 16-2 or better in league play, and then have them lose in the conference title game on that Sunday, and then you get 2 teams in?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think the big thing here is, they only have 1 game each against Davidson and VCU. So just from a purely SLU-centric case, and considering it's a home game against VCU and it's an away game against Davidson, I would rather have a better win against VCU at home then trying to rationalize that, well, Davidson's really good, and I'm okay, and so that loss against them away isn't that bad. My thought process being the Davidson game is going to be tricky either way. So would I want to rationalize a good loss or just have a better win to close out the season against VCU because they would look better with a win against Davidson? With that rationale, I'm going to go with a VCU win here is better for St. Louis.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see how it plays out. Nobody else in America cares except you and I. And it's going to play out the way it plays out anyway. Planning what's going to happen the next – yeah. What's going to happen the next 8 weeks is just going to be the next 8 weeks, and you don't know. But I would tell you the formula for Atlantic 10 teams that believe they have a shot to get in the NCAA tournament, you better win your home games the rest of the way, and you better not, even on the road, screw up against a cellar dweller.
Yeah.
If you don't win your home games and you lose, and I'm not trying to put this is anybody who knows me. For those of you who are just now tuning in, I'm a hardcore SLU guy, but you can't lose to UMass if your intent is to win the league. Mm-hmm. Am I right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that hasn't changed. I mean, you can't – I mean, my thought process over these next, at first it was 6 because we were looping in the Fordham game, but now it's the next 5 games. If you want to win this conference, if you want to be an NCAA tournament team, you can't lose any of these next 5, and there's 2 UMass games looped into there. So, yeah, you can't lose this game. I don't care if it's an away game. I don't care if it's, one of your longer trips of the year. You get it done.
You got to get it done. So, all right, there's an overview of all the things that bounce around in our heads, which is kind of strange, by the way. The Billikens did win that game against Fordham, and after a horribly ugly, atrocious, nauseating first half of play, it was ugly basketball. The Billikens got the lead, held on to the lead, and at the end of the game, rather than what we'd seen previously, sort of fritter things away and not lock it down, absolutely locked it down and walked away with the victory in the end. So while it was ugly in the second half, it continued to get better. The offense became more efficient despite still too many turnovers and put the thing away where it really wasn't in question late.
Yeah, and it kind of started, breaking towards that, result late in the first half, and then just completely, took over. But it was ugly, and so even with a 6-point lead going into half, you couldn't really, there was no feathers in your cap, if you will. It was an ugly game. You weren't doing a lot of things right. Bad turnovers. Yuri was, dribbled off his foot. Jordan Nesbitt had a really, really bad stretch with some bad turnovers and a foul called. So there were some ugly plays.
Yeah.
But eventually, Fordham with a good 2-0 start to conference play, but there again you had to win, and so you eventually started to put them away, which was good to see because I think St. Louis maybe needed a little bit of a game where things didn't go their way, but they were still able to get a W, and they were just slowly able to prove that they're a better basketball team than another one, and that's kind of what I saw. It wasn't pretty, but slowly, possession after possession, you saw that there was a difference in talent on that court, and SLU was able to take advantage of it to grind out a W.
So what are some of the other takeaways? I'm knee deep in it, of course, and as a objective outside observer, what were some of your other takeaways?
2 big things I wanted to hit on player-wise, because we talked about it so much in Tuesday's episode. Number 1 was obviously the bounce-back game from DeAndre Jones. It wasn't, it wasn't that groundbreaking, 3 of 6 from the floor, 9 points, but 10 rebounds is unbelievable for a 5'11" guard. He had a couple assists. A lot of his minutes out there, he was with Yuri Collins, and then there was a couple where he was running the offense. But we talked about his level of confidence and how it looked like it had bottomed out, and it was unfortunately really hampering his game. He comes out, he fights through some bad turnovers, some bad passes early in the game to get a 9-10 game. The only player off the bench who scored. Your thoughts on what you were seeing from DeAndre Jones? Because I know you were really hoping to see something from him.
Well, I asked him, where you been? And he just said, it was a struggle. And confidence kind of comes and goes sometimes for athletes. And with his confidence back, playing better begets more clock. When you're only playing a few minutes, it's hard to get a rhythm of the game, but it's a chicken and egg, right? So you got to play with confidence to play well to get more clock. If this team, the Billikens, are to win and be a contender in the league, he must perform.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And that game has to be a stepping stone because as solid as he was and as crucial as he was in the game, him making an impact by being a rebounder isn't going to be the formula for him. And again, early in the game, he had some bad passes. He had a couple that should have been turnovers in any other situation. They just happened to bounce the right way for St. Louis. So that was a little bit worrisome. But the fact that he was able to come back and grind out any kind of game, I thought that was big. And, it speaks to kind of the opportunism of this year across all sports, Does DeAndre Jones get that chance if Fred Thatch isn't, out of the game? And that's a huge thing right there. I mean, the bench needed somebody to come off and make an impact. And DeAndre Jones had a very kind of Fred Thatch kind of game, crash the boards, make the hustle play and those kind of things. We need to see more from him offensively in that role because, again, that kind of game necessarily isn't going to be how he contributes to this team. But if it's the stepping stone, if it's the confidence builder, and then over the next couple of games we see him, playing off the ball, leading the pick and roll, those kind of things efficiently, well, then that's going to be a huge thing as St. Louis rolls on to the rest of the season.
Yeah, one of the guys I wanted to talk about and maybe get your thoughts first before I comment is Gibson Jimerson, a marked man in this league, and he still ends up finding so many different ways to score. I wish he could get a better look from the three-point arc, but they're not giving him any room to breathe. But he grinds and gets 19 points. His work ethic is remarkable. I've said it on the radio side in St. Louis, and I would say here, go to a St. Louis University basketball game and just watch Jimerson, especially when he doesn't have the ball. You'll be amazed, and you will absolutely appreciate what this young man does.
No doubt. And that was a very impressive game from him in a lot of ways. He's gotten so much better as a finisher. He still isn't the best at actually getting into contact and using that to get to the line and get and ones. That's something he still needs to improve on. But knowing that maybe that isn't the strength of his game, he's getting so much better at using one extra dribble to get around guys and put himself in a better position for the layup. And, just the moves he's making to get his layups has really improved. We talked a lot about him in the preseason, about how he was getting all those shots up and how St. Louis had that tracker to track how many three-point shots and jumpers he was taking. I have to think that now during the season he's working a lot on his layups because it's been a huge part of his game. Obviously, his ability to find those layups on cuts and things like that has been really good. And really, one of the more impressive plays I saw from him, and this I think really shows the improvement he's made in the season in this part of his game, was midway through the second, they get out in transition. DeAndre Jones gets it over to him, and he gets a hard contest. And the guy was close too, but he takes two hard steps towards Jimmer, and Jimmer just breezes past him, dips his shoulder, one dribble, gone. And that kind of dribble and that kind of no hesitation attacking mentality, I like that a lot from him. To your point, I posted this on Twitter a little bit and was able to get some good reaction from SLU fans out there. There was a nice earlier on in the second, they ran back-to-back this play set where they put Nesbitt and Traore on the elbows.
Yeah,
they ran
Nesbitt's like a four.
Yeah, and Nesbitt, and then the first play they set, Nesbitt gets the ball, rifles in a perfect. There was no one within 10 feet of Gibson because he had curled around Traore in a perfect way, stuck his man on that screen, and got an easy one. The very next possession, they go down, they run the exact same play. Fordham cheats on it The man, I think it was Chuba Holmes, who was on Lassina Traore. He comes off and cheats it because he knows where Gibson's going. Gibson sees that, gets back around,
comes all the way through,
back up. The one thing I want to point out really quick before I move on is Lassina Traore repositioned himself and essentially turned himself into this impromptu ad-lib pin-down screen that kept Gibson open. It was a beautiful move by Lassina to turn with the play, keep his feet set, and all of a sudden now the guy's trying to get back, and all of a sudden now there's a pin-down screen. I'm not sure if that was part of the play. It wouldn't surprise me if it was, or if Lassina Traore just made it naturally. That was a beautiful thing. But here's the thing where I'm focusing on. He gets a great look from three, but he pump fakes, dribbles in, and takes a 10-footer that he misses. Even if he would have made that shot, I think I still would have been alarmed by it because, for your exact point, if he ever gets a full open look where the defender needs where the defender needs more than 2 steps to close out, he shouldn't be pump faking on those ones. He should absolutely be shooting it. When it's a hard 1-step closeout and you can get him get past it easy, I'm fine with that attack. That's why I brought up the one later. But when you have 2 or 3 full steps in front of the defender, you shouldn't be attacking on that one. That's absolutely 100% shoot the 3 every single time.
I agree, and I'm comfortable, I think, saying that Travis Ford agrees with you. And that is a thing that I think it's a guy who in Gibson Jimerson, who's selfless. There are times you want to be more selfish, smartly selfish, if that's a phrase. Here's the other thing I have to talk about. It's been eating away at me. Gibson Jimerson's 3 for 4 from the free throw line, little below his average. He's almost 90% on the year. But folks, Gibson Jimerson without the ball is fouled maliciously every single play. Every screen, he's grabbed, his shirt is pulled, he's bear hugged, he's elbowed, he's pushed, and it's part of the game. Not if you get an advantage.
Exactly.
That's the distinction between a foul or not a foul. You're right. Physical's physical. I'm all for that. But if the defender gets an advantage, that's a foul by definition.
Yep.
I don't know what's going on in the Atlantic 10 and why it's open season on Gibson Jimerson, but I promise you, as I get to the East Coast and I'll eventually run into somebody in the league office, I will find out. It's so egregious that if you're in a 5th grade CYC game and they're doing that to your kid and there's no whistle, you're running out on the floor. You're attacking a ref. That's how bad it is. It's egregious. It's malicious. It's just wrong. And it's not good for basketball. Every sport, it's imperative for every sport in the world to protect your offense. Here's why. I'm going to make every defender in every sport upset right now. Anybody can play defense. Defense is technique and desire. That's defense. Offense is a skill, is a talent, is a gift. I don't care if you're talking about the beautiful game where the officials are idiots by calling the offside rule tight instead of liberally. They're idiots. They're killing the game. I don't care what sport it is. It's your imperative to protect the offense of the game. And the Atlantic 10 is killing it. They're absolutely killing it. And I will eventually get to the bottom of it.
And, and I agree. And some teams have been, admittingly, the gamesmanship's been good. We were talking about this off air a week ago. They will grab him right as he hits the screen man. As he's trying to get around the screen, they'll grab him. And I think they're getting away with hiding their arm between him and the screener, and the official just can't see that they're just gripping him. I agree every time.
You saw it. Let me pay you a couple of grand and you get a whistle. You'd do that for a couple of grand a game, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
No excuse. And you're 100% right. In fact, I'm all for Travis getting a tee once a game just to protect Jimerson. Walking out on the floor, that's an effing foul.
Yeah, I agree. And the point breakdown will break in favor of St. Louis if he gets 2 or 3 more attempts per game, because he's going to hit at least one of those. And again,
and a half a dozen more free throw attempts.
That's another thing. I would say about 40% of his free throw attempts being low is him not accepting contact in the paint the way he really should. 60 to 70% though, I'm completely okay with saying he does not get calls he should nearly as often as he should. And here's the thing: he also, I think he sometimes gets punished for not going down easy, because there's a lot of times where he'll get like hooked and he stays up and just tries to get a shot up, and they don't get. And sometimes he won't get called on. The defender won't get called. I think it's because he doesn't go down really easily, which is the reason why he needs to accept contact and finish through it more often.
Because he's a man.
Damn right. Speaking of a guy who's growing up into a man, he's still pretty young, but I want to talk about 17 minutes for Lassina Traore in that game.
Yes.
And a bunch of those minutes he was against Chuba Ohms, who, again, about 23 years old. We're talking about a 4-year age difference in those two. That's about as big as you can get when you're talking about two guys on a college court. 17 minutes. He didn't score, but I have no issue with that. He only took 1 shot, 9 rebounds. He had an assist on a nice kick out to Gibson Jimerson on an offensive rebound. Not 3 of those 9 rebounds were offensive rebounds. I loved the game from Lassina Traore. The one thing I thought was funny was there was a couple times where Fordham, as soon as he went to catch the ball, they blitzed him with an extra guy because still got the butterfingers.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Chuba Ohms is statistically, you argue, the best big man in the league. Statistically. He had a brutal night.
Yes, he did.
He became a non-factor.
That's
a credit to Franco and Basil.
I mean, his growth has been incredible, Traore. I mean, he's great in space. Again, he's really good in the pick and roll. I think that's something that, because he doesn't score a lot in it, but his footwork and his body placement in the pick and roll is just about perfect for a freshman like that to come in. The minutes he was getting when Linton was still healthy, I thought he was playing really well. But for then over the last week or two to start getting more minutes, and then to get 17, a lot of them against, like you said, a big man who was having a great start to his season despite a rough game there in Chuba Ohms. That was I couldn't believe how good he was in that many minutes. I cannot wait till Martin Linton gets back, because with the way that I have to think Traore has increased the confidence of the coaching staff in him, I think we're going to start seeing some of those 2 big man lineups, and I'm excited to see what that means.
Yeah, I think so too. We've gone on and on about a game of a few days ago, but we learned some things about that. I still haven't heard for sure if Thatch and Linson will be back for Thursday, but let's take a quick look at the UMass game. A team at the bottom of the league, but Travis, as coaches are wont to do, look at how things can go worse, the worst possible scenario. And that is that UMass, they're a team of chuckers. They're going to shoot a bunch of threes. And if it's a night where you're not on spot and they make them, you got problems on your hands.
Yeah, the fact that they take 26 threes per game and they hit 41% of them as a team should scare anyone. I don't care if they're because, especially for St. Louis, if you have a 5-minute stretch where you can outscore the ball, which you shouldn't, because while they are a good offensive team, there's a reason they're not a great team. They are horrible defensively. But if for some reason St. Louis has a bad stretch on offense, UMass could easily jump, get 6 or 9 points just like that. Now it's a different game. So that's where I'm a little bit worried, just like you said. If they have a huge game from 3 and St. Louis has any kind of blip on offense against a team that it would be inexcusable to have an aforementioned blip, that could happen. But unfortunately, in basketball, sometimes shots don't fall for you, and sometimes they do for other people. That's why, Norfolk State beat Missouri.
That's exactly right. And so we'll talk about that at the end of the week. The Bills play UMass on Thursday in the UMass hockey arena. You can tell I'm not fond of that building.
I was going to say, the fact that you just, that's like when people used to say, oh yeah, we're going to go play in Oakland, the baseball stadium.
Yeah. So the Billikens are going to be at the UMass hockey arena. So a lot going on in the pro game. I wanted to pick your brain a little bit. I heard you talking with our friend Frank Cusimano about the Chicago Bulls. I've always been a Jimmy Butler fan. He is so much fun to watch. You sounds like you think that the Bulls can be a legit East contender if they're 100% healthy.
Well, you're conflating a little bit of our conversations because I was talking about Jimmy Butler and the Heat today.
I meant the Heat. The Heat playing the Bulls. Yeah.
Yes, because the Heat are playing the Bulls, and because I've also been talking about the Bulls because my big question with the Bulls after they got shellacked by the Nets was whether or not they could jump into that next echelon. And then earlier today, The Athletic, which obviously I love, they put out their power rankings, and they actually had the Heat as the highest ranked team in the East.
Wow.
And
you agree? You agree?
No, I think Milwaukee's still the best team in the East. But their rationale, which is completely reasonable, is that Jimmy Butler's missed 18 games, Bam Adebayo's missed, I think, 25, and they're still a top 5 team offensively and a top 8 team defensively. So that's their rationale on those points. I think that Milwaukee's still the best team in the East, just because Giannis Antetokounmpo and the bench and the depth they have, Chris Middleton, Dante DiVincenzo, the other bench, they've built a solid bench on that squad. It's not as deep as the Heat. You don't have Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. You don't have all those guys that the Heat have necessarily. But I still like the Bucks a little bit better. The Nets, though, Kevin Durant, that injury, the Nets, you thought for a minute, okay, they're gonna take the hit with the Kyrie fine, which is gonna cost them $100,000, which is nothing. And James Harden, finally gotten into basketball shape, and so he's playing better. So you thought, man, the Nets are going to be it's the Nets and the Bucks. That was my rationale when I talked about that Bulls question. But no Kevin Durant means that whole thing is kind of out until we see what it looks like afterwards and when he comes back healthy, which will be in late March, early April. I think might be what the timetable looks like. So I think it's 6 to 8 weeks. So 2 months if you're smart. Because if you're the Nets, why bring him back? Quickly. You're gonna be like the 7th seed, 6th or 7th seed at the worst. So the Heat are good, and I think Bam Adebayo is amazing. But the thing that Frank kind of brought up when you kind of asked that question, do you agree? Do you think Giannis will be stopped in a series by Bam Adebayo?
No.
And that's the answer to the question then, because you can talk about regular season all you want, but just like the NHL, the NBA is 2 different seasons because everything changes. The shot selection changes. The way defenses play changes. The way it's officiated tightens up. So you can't – it's just – that's the question. Yeah, can Bam Adebayo shut down Giannis? The answer is no. So the Bucks are still probably the best in the East. The big thing going on in the West, if you want to, is that the Lakers are talking about, or at least the report right now, is that Frank Vogel is coaching for his job. Essentially, he's going to be on a game-by-game analysis of whether or not he's going to keep his job. That's ridiculous in the first way. The second reason it's ridiculous is they suck because Anthony Davis isn't healthy, and when he was healthy, his refusal to play the 5 and play the way he should was costing them basketball games. And so I don't see how this is Frank Vogel's fault. Also, Frank Vogel didn't trade for Russell Westbrook. And while he finally made a choice to sit Russell Westbrook in a crucial moment and it worked, I don't think you need to hold it against him for building a broken roster either. So it's ridiculous to me that that story came out. But I'm also not surprised because LeBron's the GM, but he doesn't get criticized for the moves that the actual GM makes. And LeBron's the coach, and he doesn't get criticized for the moves the coaches make. And so that it's a ridiculous bar to clear right now for anybody else in the Lakers organization that isn't LeBron James. And at this point, I can't imagine, I'm sure having all the money in the world, living in LA, the workplace culture still probably isn't that bad. But still, I can't imagine that's a fun place to work, unless you're, in LeBron James's circle right now.
You would think that, yeah, you wouldn't want to be outside that circle and be a part of the organization. Not just a player, but anybody in the organization.
Yeah, it sounds like he's got a stranglehold on it now, and I'm sure they'll fire Frank Vogel and they'll bring in another player. And inevitably, if Anthony Davis comes back healthy and starts playing the 5 like he should and starts playing it well, people will heap praise on whatever random coach it is that LeBron anoints. And unfortunately, Frank Vogel will get the short end of the stick, just like a lot of previous coaches, both in LA and under LeBron James, have gotten. He's a defender, but man, the way he handles coaches now is just annoying.
Let me go up the coast and talk a little bit about the issues with the Warriors and Draymond Green out, Klay Thompson back, Draymond Green out. They're still not as good as they were for a little while. To me, they don't seem like, man, just not hitting on all cylinders. I'm wondering if Phoenix is going to make a little separation.
Phoenix is going to start separating because we talked about here. Draymond Green was my pick for Defensive Player of the Year with what he was doing with the Warriors. And so the reason they were still winning a lot, even with Curry having some down games, was because they were one of the best defensive teams in the league. And they're not that without Draymond Green. And so they're not winning games in the same way or really at all right now. And the Suns have passed them up. The Athletic power rankings we were just talking about, they had the Suns passing up the Warriors as well, because right now the Warriors aren't the top defense in the league. They aren't the top team. And until Klay Thompson gets back both offensively and kind of in the groove of that defense, because that defense, when Draymond's in, I've never seen a defense communicate the way that defense does. You always talk about, you don't talk about like a fourth grade team, do not talk on offense, talk on defense. You can't, and you try to explain to them, listen, you can't over talk on defense. Show them the Warriors from earlier in the year. They're pointing. They're yelling at guys to run across the thing. Go to that guy. Go to that guy. Go to that guy. Run over here. Come here. Switch. Like they are talking more than you ever think the NBA team would, because you're like, they're pointing like between two guys. Just seem like so simplistic for an NBA team, but they're doing that, and so it works, and that's why they're so good. But if you don't have the maestro conducting it, it's going to fall apart, and that's what we're seeing.
Did I miss any hot topics in the NBA for you?
Going pretty well. No, not really. The Grizzlies are still.
What are we looking forward to midweek?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, because the games right now aren't great. Golden State's about to play tonight. The big thing I'm looking at midweek is probably, I would say, Miami's got a big game against Portland. But Portland's not good. But at this point,
we've teased Miami enough that people should check it out and see if they agree.
Exactly. You get a good chance to watch Miami. It's going to be a home game for Miami, so that's going to be, look for some bloodshot eyes with the Trailblazers players, just because that's how it goes there. This one looked like it was going to be a wash until 2 days ago. The Wizards trying to get back on track. They have the Nets reeling a little bit without Kevin Durant. It will be interesting to see on both sides. One, can Bradley Beal kind of have a better second half, but also how much does this Kevin Durant injury kind of hurt the Nets right off the bat? Do James Harden and Kyrie Irving kind of have enough to maybe pick them, pull them up by the bootstraps and keep some winning going even without Kevin Durant?
Yeah.
It's easy to start lollygagging after a bad injury against a not-so-good team. That'll be an interesting one to see just how those teams actually look. And then prime time in that one, do the Lakers have anything left in the tank against a mediocre, potentially already giving up Indiana Pacers team? It's going to be the latest game on Wednesday. It might not be a great game, but that might be one you tune in and say, are the Lakers locked in, or are they completely checked out on the Frank Vogel? If you lose to the Pacers, Wednesday night in a rough game, that's how it breaks out, it wouldn't shock me if Frank Vogel wakes up on Thursday without a job.
Wow, hot take. I love it. That's good. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll check in on it. We could get back together probably sometime on Friday after the Billikens play at UMass, and we'll see how that goes. Oh, by the way, real quick thought on Martin Luther King Day, the Illini played and lost in double overtime. Speaking of officiating, one of Coburn's fouls I thought was a really inappropriate call and it absolutely cost the Illini. But Curbelo appears to be back, baby. And I don't know if the Illini are a Final Four team, but I think there's no doubt they're a top 10 team. And I expect them to really do some huge damage in the Big Ten, assuming health.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. They're a top 10 team come March. No doubt in my mind. They might – I'm thinking they could be a 1 seed. I think 2 or 3 is more likely. Curbelo being back now, I'm interested to see exactly where their ceiling is, because if he can come in and put up 20 points in 26 minutes, that's unbelievable. I mean, we didn't expect for Plummer to be this kind of shooter and this kind of playmaker for them before the start of the season. So change your thought process. They have Kofi Coburn. He's even more of a monster than he was last year. They have Plummer. They now have Curbelo. If he develops at all, they might even be just as good, if not better, than last year. I would assume he was a great player, but having both Plummer and Curbelo, that was a 2-man attack that they didn't necessarily have that kind of balance last year.
So I agree.
They're not as deep. They don't have guys like Fashanis Veely on the roster this year. But with those big 3, and then Frazier being another solid guard for them, they're going to be dangerous. They're going to make some damage in the tournament, no doubt about that.
So bonus college coverage. We might start getting into more of that stuff. Rocc knows, and our viewers don't really know. I'm kind of a West Coast basketball honk. Mountain West Coast Conference, Pac-12, and Big 12 too. That's Midwest West. So it's really, really good basketball. I'm one of those late night stay up guys and watch those games. So now that we're into the meat of the conference schedules, it's time to keep an eye on those. So we'll do more of that as well.
I heard that guy. We talked a little bit Gonzaga BYU, but I heard the Gonzaga game. I think was that last Saturday night against Santa Clara. They beat them by like 30, but apparently the first half was one of the more fun halves of basketball in a long time.
That West Coast basketball is really, really fun. The argument is, can that kind of basketball, because there is a style, in my opinion, not just Gonzaga, but all those teams, can they hang with the physical rigors of SEC Big Ten stuff? Reasonable question, and that's why you have a tournament in March.
Well, here we go. You know what? We're giving people some games on Wednesday, but here's a way to top off your basketball watching on Thursday. You're obviously going to be watching St. Louis play UMass. Late night, Gonzaga plays San Francisco. San Francisco is a top 35 team in the KenPom rankings. They're dangerous. If you don't realize how good San Francisco is, it's because you're not Bob Ramsey and you haven't been watching a lot of West Coast basketball. So a perfect college basketball little lineup there on Thursday. After you finish up SLU and UMass, stay watching college basketball. That Gonzaga San Francisco game is going to be a sneaky great game this year. Mid-majors
rule. Rocc, it's been great. We'll talk to everybody again on Friday. Great stuff. Really appreciate it. That's Matt Rocchio. I'm Bob Ramsey. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the 2-Man Game here on Claibs Online.
St. Louis Acura was the #1 Acura dealer in Missouri in 2021, and we were the 17th in the nation for Acura sales volume. We sell over 100 pre-owned vehicles monthly, and we service all of the makes and models that we sell. We are waiting for verification of our 30th Acura Precision Team Award, the only dealer in the nation with so many awards for customer satisfaction and dealership performance. We have 300 pre-owned vehicles in stock right now. St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.